Okay, on to the program. I think by now we all know about scooters and Dockless bicycles. We've seen lots of them in recent months, and I'm sure most of you rode them here tonight. In case you didn't know, we are about halfway through a 9-month study period with these two-wheel vehicles, after which the county is expected to decide on what to do permanently. Now, we can disagree on whether scooters are the coolest way to get around quickly, conveniently, inexpensively, and while having fun, or if they are a plague on Arlington, having to avoid them when they're in motion and having to walk around or over them when they're parked. One thing we can all agree on is that the riders are maximizing their use during this test period. Arlington's opinions of scooters cover a wide range. So too has the acceptance by other localities. Scooters have been banned in Norfolk, Virginia, Columbia, South Carolina, Atlanta, Hollywood, and Dubai, among many other places. On the other hand, bird scooters can be found in over 100 cities. True, Reed? Okay. I was recently in Austin, Texas, and I can tell you that compared to Austin, Arlington barely uses scooters. I'm sure we'll have a lively discussion about dockless bikes and scooters, so let's get to it. Our first speaker is Jim Larson. He is the Bureau Chief of Arlington County Community Services. He's been in Arlington for 2 years and for 15 years was Executive Director of the Dulles Area Transport Association. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Larson.
Change? Oh, I can see it right there. No, that one. That's it. You got it. So all I have to do is enter and then one.
And then you can just press this.
Got it. Perfect. Oh, I think I can handle that. Okay. Hello, everybody. I did not ride my scooter here. I want to make that clear. However, Greg McLowski, if he'll stand up, is the manager of our program from the beginning, and he did ride his scooter. And he also, this doesn't matter to the group, but he's been with us all along, and we're losing him to DDOT April 12th. But we'll have a friend across there to get more information. Thanks, Greg. So you'll hear it all. So what is it? You know, various terms are in use. Our micro-mobility, that's the new buzzword in our industry. Dockless bike share, scooter share. We're using shared mobility devices because we wanted to come up with a term to hold all the things that might come later. But basically they're scooters and e-bikes, pretty much. They include pedal bikes, pedal assist e-bikes, and stand-up e-scooters. They also have an app, each one of them, so you can find out where they are when finished, park anywhere within reason. Notice it says within reason. We'll get to that later because I'm not sure they're all within reason. Why allow them? New transportation option. In our business of transportation demand management, trying to give you options, we call it first last mile connection to transit. That's one of the things we'll be analyzing to see if that's relatively true or not as we go forward. Encourage non-single occupancy vehicle trip making, improve air quality, decrease congestion, and just another tool in that toolbox I was talking about. So here's a little history in case some of you, I happen to be living with this almost every day so I can probably memorize it, but September 2017, Dockless Bike Share launched in DC and Montgomery County with 5 companies: OFO, Mobike, Lime, Spin, and Jump. Let's see, OFO's gone, right? Mobike's gone. The other 3 are still around, right? Maybe you said that down before. March 2018, Scooter Share launches in DC with 3 companies, Lime, Skip, and Bird. And then in June 2018, it came to Arlington. Of course, you may remember, if you read papers and other things, even though they're here tonight, we didn't know they were coming. I got a 1-day notice, and we didn't have anything in place. So they came, and then we quickly, working with the county manager and county board, created our first pilot, which was launched in October 1st with a board approval. Lyman Bird started and were approved. In November 2018, Lyft was approved for e-scooters. December 2018, Lyft was approved for e-bikes, or Lime, I'm sorry, approved for e-bikes. January 2019, Spin and Jump were approved. Jump has not yet deployed, although I think they are shortly. Let's see, February 2019, Skip and Bolt. Bolt is the yellow one you've been seeing. I'm only picking on it because it's recently here. March 2019, Lime withdraws e-bikes for a specific strategic reason from Arlington. So 9-month pilot program, 10/1/18 through June 30. Initial fleet size was 350 devices per mode per company, meaning e-bikes, one company, 350. E-scooters, 350. Fleet size growth is based on a performance metric, which essentially says they have to average 3 uses per unit, right, per day, right? And I think one company has done this twice. So that must be Bird, because they're here, I'll tell you that. Fleet size and growth, top speed, 10 miles an hour. That was our decision. I'll be glad to talk about it later. There's controversy over that, and I've heard that at various citizen and business groups. We were concerned and maybe you have that on another slide, but we were concerned. 4 slides, okay. Yeah, coming up. Oh, wait a minute, I messed that up, hang on. Back, got it, okay, sorry. Correction of misparked devices by the operators. There's a stipulation for that. And then data sharing. One of the important aspects is data sharing so that we can evaluate what's going on. You'll hear more about that in a little bit. $8,000 permit fee to help fund staff and consultant time per mode, and a $5,000 surety bond should the operator go bankrupt. To my knowledge, that hasn't happened yet, at least here. Regional coordination, we're involved in that and have been from the beginning. Pilot language was drafted through discussion with our regional partners. We looked at best practices as they were known at that time, both here and also in some national locations, including Austin, Chicago, Seattle, and I think some other areas. We wanted identical regulations and data sharing requirements to limit confusion among the public and increase cooperation among the companies. We didn't exactly get that, but we're headed that direction. For example, we invited Alexandria to our group. We were at 10. We were hoping they would start at 10. They started at 15. District of Columbia at that time was at 10, and we feel pretty comfortable that that was the right place to start, at least during the pilot. 10 miles an hour on the scooter. I haven't tested them recently, so I'm not sure, but something like that. So far, we've presented to 9 public committees and commissions, probably some meetings even beyond that since I made this slide, or since Greg made the slide. We have a web page with information about the pilot program, which we'll talk about in a little bit. We did a news release at that time to try to get the word out. This website listed here, mobility@arlingtonva.us, is monitored regularly. We have a business intern of the county, and all of us get copies. So if you have a picture of something good or bad or a complaint or a compliment, I urge you to send that in, because that will be a piece of what will help us in the evaluation process. It's not the only piece, but it's a start. Okay, this will hit you with the numbers. October of 2018 to March of 2019, there were combined 253,076 e-scooter and e-bike trips. And during the same time, that same number traveled 241,742 miles. I got 1 minute, I gotta go fast. So we'll tell you about that later during question and answer. 21 reported crashes, top 4 issues in Arlington: sidewalk riding, improper parking, unsafe behavior, underage riders. Complaints have gone down, but that was during the winter. Many factors to consider: impacts to pedestrians, cyclists, motorists, fleet sizes, parking compliance, communication with riders, number of rides and trips, and overall public satisfaction with the program. We're going to right now into formal feedback period. That's the formal thing that we do in Arlington, May to June. Update to the county board, May 18th. Evaluation period, July, August. We're going to be recommending the county board to extend the pilot through October because we need the summer to do the full evaluation. We don't want to come to the county board and its citizens unprepared through that process. There. Did I make it?
I claim back your 2 seconds. Next, we have Alex Held. He is a public engagement specialist for Arlington County Department of Environmental Services. He hails from Mineola, Kansas, and a grad of Wichita State University. He moved to the DMV in 2014 and is a recipient of the 40 Under 40 Award from Leadership Center of Excellence, which is formerly Leadership Arlington. Ladies and gentlemen, Alex Held.
And I always like to tell people where I'm from because I'll give anybody $5 if you can know exactly where Mineola, Kansas is. So, anyways, so again, my name is Alex Held, and thank you for your hospitality tonight. I'm excited to be here. Unfortunately, my colleague Rich Viola, who had really been in the weeds on this plan of updating the Master Transportation Plan bike element, he is at the Planning Commission, and it did not include a free meal or drink. So I think I got the longer straw on that. So anyways, so time for an update. So the Master Transportation Plan, the bike element is one of 8 elements of the Master Transportation Plan. There's parking element, there's the parking curb space element, there's a pedestrian element, there's a streets element, we've got transit, and then also transportation demand. So there's several things going on. What this plan does is really guiding infrastructure spending and planning through the next decade, so through 2030. So why are we updating it? Well, there's a lot of things that's changed in bike culture. Different facilities have been added. Protected bike facilities, when this plan was originally adopted in 2008, were not really a thing in the United States. We've also had more people using bike infrastructure and bike facilities. So I think our mode share at this point for bicycles is about 5% of the average user. So, and then also the technology has evolved. You all have seen Capital Bike Share become extremely popular in our region, and that was not a thing in 2008. So, and I guess I'm not being loud enough, I'm sorry. Anyway, so there's been kind of some elements that have changed, which has kind of warranted an update. Also, the other thing I'd like to mention, we have actually built a lot of the infrastructure currently within the adopted plan in 2008. So we're kind of looking to make new connections and make different changes. Oh, also e-bikes and scooters were not a thing. And so we're trying to, and I will point out that this plan actually became drafted in, the draft became available right as e-scooters and e-bikes started becoming to Arlington as a transportation option. So this incorporates the infrastructure necessary so everybody can have their own space on the road and so we can have peace on the road. So this is kind of a little bit of our process, what we've done. This has been a 2.5-year process of public engagement. We've touched about 3,000 folks within the community, and we've done a wide variety of things to really just try to get to people where they are. So it included, going to farmers markets, online engagement. Of course, we've done traditional public meetings, but that's been kind of the tactic. So I think one of the main points that came out of our public engagement was this idea that if you make bicycling safer, you will increase the usage of bicycling. Like, if I do not feel comfortable riding a bike on Columbia Pike as it is today, that is the last thing that I want to do. But now maybe if there was a protected bike facility or a off-street facility or something that runs parallel, we can have that conversation. And this is kind of a national trend, this idea in blue, that you improve facilities, you increase usage. So the other thing we ask folks in our public engagement process is, okay, where would you like to bike? What are some key destinations? Where are you trying to get to? Also, what kind of infrastructures would you like to see improved? Would you like to see connections that don't exist currently, but where would you like to see those connections in the future? And then also, and as far as the maintenance too, like what kind of things and like what kind of trails need maintenance? Currently, my best example is the Washington Boulevard Trail that we just opened in November. It's a beautiful trail, but now the Arlington Boulevard Trail, it's a different story. So, and then also kind of how are we going to prioritize these investments too as well? These kind of things we saw input on. So here are kind of some significant policy themes of this document. So I think one of the main differences between this document and the 2008 version that was approved is this document adds a vision. The 2008 version was more focused on increasing bicycling as a mode share, versus here we're trying, okay, we've got a lot of people interested in bicycling, we've got the infrastructure there. How can we provide a place where it's easy for people of all abilities to utilize bicycling as a transportation option? So that includes low stress routes, safer infrastructure, off-street facilities, management of trails as a transportation resource. We've actually done some studies on our trail system. And we've actually noticed that people are actually riding the trails at night. So that kind of suggests that this idea that people are using them as a way to get to work or a way to come from work. There's a lot of service workers in our community that kind of use this as an option when Metro is shut down or the bus is ending or that sort of thing. So that's kind of the general gist of that. The other thing, too, that this plan does is really fully integrate this into our greater transportation system. Making it kind of a complete multimodal options. By giving people more options, you're decreasing the demand on a singular mode. A lot of cities in the country, biking is not comfortable, walking is not comfortable, transit is even worse. So trying to give people options kind of spreads around that demand, so not everybody's swirling around on the Beltway. So these are some of the primary bicycling corridors. As you can see, kind of some of the trails are highlighted. We've also got some major roads. And the infrastructure varies from area to area. Some are on-street facilities, some are shared streets, some are off-street trails. It's kind of a wide variety of everything there. So really, the other thing about this plan is kind of increasing equity, so providing better connections for bicyclists through all parts of the county. So I can live in my neighborhood in Columbia Forest and easily get to Marymount University by biking in a low stress route. Unfortunately, I took an Uber today, so sorry, every environment. We also looked at kind of additional connections. A lot of people were interested in better connections to schools. Hoffman Boston was a very prominent comment that we received. We also saw a lot of interest in Columbia Pike as a corridor. Currently, there's a bike boulevard, so to say, on 7th Street, kind of parallel to Columbia Pike. But a lot of people were interested in maybe have some sort of safe facility along Columbia Pike to access that, businesses there. So a lot of the emphasis, there's a lot of variety of users on the trails. You've got walkers, you've got bicyclists, you've got, and my favorite users are four-legged friends of dogs. And so we're trying to address the conflicts on those trails. So maybe in some areas making them wider, making accommodate more users. As one option, one idea that came in this plan is maybe lighting certain areas of the trails so people using them at night feel safe. Now, we were very interested in working with our community to see if that's something would be appropriate in a certain area. So there's been a lot of concern around natural resources. I think a magnolia bog was one concern that had been brought up to us. So we're working with our community, are working with our partners to identify what is appropriate for a specific area. So again, my colleague is going through the Planning Commission today, and then it goes off to the county board for approval at our April 23rd meeting. So I thank you for your hospitality. Please, if you have comment, please email your county board members, talk to your county board members. Rich's contact information is here. And then the final slide is we need to make sure, You know, a lot of infrastructure spending is done by the census. And so I encourage you to tell your neighbor next year, tell your friends, tell everybody you know that it is very important to fill out your census. Shape your future, it starts here. So thank you.
Okay, as I close this down, I think I should, in full disclosure, mention that I do ride my bike to work maybe twice a week when the pollen is not as active as it is now. But I am very fortunate in that I work, that I live near Bluemont Park. I work near the Jefferson Memorial, so I can take bike paths almost the whole way. Okay. Our final speaker is Reed Teschner. He is the government partnership. He works on the government partnerships for Bird. He is an Arlington resident and was previously previously worked with a national trade association. Ladies and gentlemen, Reed Teschner.
Good to go? Well, thank you first and foremost to the Committee of 100 for having me here tonight. As was mentioned, my name is Reed Teschner. I'm from Bird Scooters. I'm sure folks have seen them around Arlington since we've been around for a couple months now. Just a little background on the company as a whole. We've been in existence since late 2017, and we're looking to basically provide an affordable transit option, clean energy, and something that solves what we like to call the first and last mile problem. I'm sure everyone here is an Arlington resident, knows plenty of areas where there's no metro stop, no bus stop, too far to walk, or too short to drive your car. So that's the exact space that we're trying to fill in right there. Safety is a big concern of ours, as you can imagine. You know, this is a new type of technology, so it's a hot button issue. You'll hear a lot of headlines on it. We've provided over 65,000 free helmets since our inception. So all users have to do is go through our app, pay a shipping fee of $1.99, and we'll send them a free helmet. We also run through a pretty extensive in-app tutorial once a user gets started on the app, basically showing you how to park correctly, where to ride, if sidewalk riding is or is not allowed in your city or county, and best way to park your vehicle. At the end of each ride, we actually require users to take a photograph of their parking job to prove that they've kept it out of the way. We want to stay ADA compliant. We want to stay out of folks' walking path. So those are some of the big things that we're concerned with. Rider education is huge for us. As I mentioned, we've only been in existence for a year or two now, so this is a new technology. As I consider Uber 10 years ago was a new technology to everyone, and everyone was a little taken aback by it then too. So we're trying to do our best now at working with cities and counties like Arlington. Jim has been a great partner for us here in Arlington as we've been operating to really get the feedback that the city has given us and the citizens itself want as well. So I think once everyone in the county is utilizing these to the fullest extent, then we've succeeded to a certain point of providing an affordable and environmentally friendly transportation option. So I hope the program continues to grow over the years. We're expanding through the Commonwealth and the DMV area all the time. Just opened up in Alexandria last week, so we're continuing in this region. As Jim mentioned, we're also in DC as well. So we're really looking forward to continuing to make a positive impact on everyone, while also taking in a lot of education along the way as well. So we're constantly evolving as a company. I think we've learned a lot since we began in 2017. I think we've changed a lot of the way we do things, and we just want to continue to be good partners with Arlington County itself and other counties like that we feel like we could have a good partnership with. So I'll keep it a little open-ended now, and I really look forward to taking everyone's questions later. I think that would be a little more interactive. I'm sure there are a lot of questions, but I appreciate the time to speak, and I'm looking forward to chatting with everyone a little more later.
Okay, now comes the Q&A portion. I invite our speakers to come up to the table over here. And while they do, do we have any elected officials here to recognize? I didn't see any. Well, we have John Weistat. He's the he's the most recent. He's a former county board member. John, would you?
We had 4 chairs.
Oh, Mary Margaret Whipple.
Be careful, it's close on the edge.
Our state senator is here.
It's dangerous.
Oh, former senator. We have a lot of formers here today.
You're going to fall off.
You guys okay?
So far, so good. I'm not taking any chances. Okay. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay, right? I'm on. Yeah, you're fine. I'm good.
Okay, so we'll get started with the questions and answers. I think most of you have been here before, so you know the tradition we have here. Please, if you can, please stand up, state your name, and please ask your question in the form of a question. We have two men with microphones, John and Lynn.
One man and me.
So who's got the first question? Lynn's got a question.
Okay. This is a question for the bike share. If I wanted a bike share near my neighborhood or where I live or on the intersection near me or something, how would I, and there's none there now, how would I go about doing that?
Oh, Capital Bike Share. Oh, Capital Bike Share, that's me. Well, it's also Greg sitting there. So you want to get one there?
Yeah, I think it's a good place for one. Let's
Well,
say
right
I
now,
had that
due
in
to
mind.
county board budget restrictions, we have frozen all expansion. If you want to send me an email, I will try to get you involved in the process because we can only have hope. We do have a couple of areas we're trying to raise funds to put them in, and there are a whole group that are in line. I think we have like eight are on the waiting list. So we'd at least like to talk to you, maybe see what else is going on. We can make some opportunities. Thanks for that question. Appreciate it.
Okay, next question, John.
Thanks. John Weistat. So this is really directed to Mr. Larson, but all three of you feel free to chime in. So our metro system is under stress, both Metro Rail and Metro Bus, because of declining ridership. And I'm just wondering, have you been able to measure the impact of the increased use of scooters and electronic bikes relative to the metro and the metro system? Are you finding that some of those scooter riders would have otherwise taken Metro Bus or Metro Rail, or is it too difficult to say?
No,
Thanks.
at this point, it's maybe too difficult. But Greg, did you want to say anything about that?
Yes, right.
Come on up. I think we'll allow you up front here, Greg.
I think the other thing, John, that I'd like to point out is that, Metro and the bus system is increased competition. I can order a car on my phone, I can order a scooter on my phone, I can see a bike, oh, I'm walking down the street, there's a scooter. So it's competition, and so people tend to gravitate toward the transportation mode that is the most convenient for them for a particular trip. For me, for example, this morning, I took the art bus because it's across the street from my house. I came back. I went to a meeting at Central Library and took a bike share, took an Uber because I wasn't feeling well from the bike share, and then took an Uber here. So it's kind of like, what is the most convenient mode for you? And so I think that's where and we need to arm people with information and prepare them and encourage additional usage and improve the facilities as well.
Hi, folks. My name is Greg Maleski. I'm a contractor with Metro Bike LLC. I'm contracted by Arlington County to run the scooter program here. And to answer Mr. Weistat's question, that is something that we're looking at over the summer. So I believe Jim mentioned, a formal feedback and evaluation period over the summer. And so part of that is going to look at what we call mode replacement, and that's looking at how many folks, substituted. Thank you. Car trips for scooter trips, or substituted metro trips for scooter trips. we've looked at, we don't have the data right now to say what is happening in Arlington. We can say that a lot of people are taking them to go to Metro, to and from. So every month we get monthly data. We get data packages from the operators, including the points where trips begin and where trips end, and we're finding a lot of them are on the Roslyn-Ballston and the Route 1 corridors around sort of Metro stops. So it indicates right now that a lot of folks are taking them to and from transit. But we can't say for sure how much, and so we're hoping to answer that over the summer.
We'll
John,
keep
we have a
watching
question
that,
over
John.
here.
Should I sit down or should I?
Yeah, thank you. Is that on? Yep, okay. Yeah, my name's Charles Webb. I'm a pedestrian in the Boston metro area. According to the memorandum of agreement that the vendors had to agree to, electric scooters are prohibited from operating on sidewalks. And electric scooters and electric bicycles are prohibited from operating on Arlington County bike trails. And I also understand that there have been 4 pedestrian injuries so far. Now, would you please describe the nature of these pedestrian injuries so we can understand that aspect of it?
This is me again. Hi, so this is Greg Malesky, and I believe we've actually emailed back and forth. Yeah, so as you mentioned, yes, scooter, right now electric scooters are prohibited from operating on sidewalks. And as we all know, not everyone is following that. Either they don't know, or personally I think it's because they feel uncomfortable riding in the roadway, which is why we need more protected bicycle infrastructure, which Alex presented on earlier. You asked about the four pedestrian SMD rider incidents, and I'll give a caveat that is probably underreported. You know, we've received, I think, 27 reported crashes since the pilot began back in October, and that's you know, people falling over on them. This is people being hit by cars, people running into parked cars. But unfortunately, there have been four crashes involving pedestrians. Very unfortunate. From my recollection, I'm afraid I can't give specifics at the moment because I'm trying to rack my brain, but they suffered, you know, the pedestrians that were hit suffered, you know, minor injuries, you know, cuts and abrasions. I don't know if I can speak any more to that. I don't want to give any wrong information, but you know, minor injuries. But you know, we're monitoring these things, and we're trying our best to keep people off the sidewalk.
And let me add to that, the challenge, there's a couple challenges. Things get reported to the police department, depending on what's going on. We're getting that. We're getting the data information from the operators, right? But we're also getting people writing into the e-mobility site, not necessarily coordinated, sometimes duplicate complaints. And then we're also talking to, in this case, Virginia Hospital. They don't track this kind of an emergency coming in. So it's very, and there's more to that, but it's very hard to know. And I think you mentioned being in Austin. Austin is looking at this very subject right now of reporting of accidents, and maybe the Center for Disease Control, right? Or no, yeah. They're looking at the subject of getting that corrected, at least in Austin. So we're going to be watching that very closely. So I guess goes back to the summary. We don't know that we're getting everything, but we're reporting what we know, right? Thanks a lot.
I'd also like to just piggyback on that, and how that relates to the bike plan is that, you know, creating infrastructure where people feel safe will help with destructive behavior. I personally do not feel safe riding a scooter on George Mason or Lee Highway. Maybe other people have a little bit less of a tolerance of risk, but I do not feel safe. And so creating the infrastructure, protected bike lanes, and giving everybody a piece of the right-of-way will help with some of that behavior. The other thing is education, and we can work with, you know, our partners. We can do some campaigns as well to really help, you know, encourage appropriate use.
Okay, next question over here.
Hi. Sorry, I'm Kate Harrington. Actually, I live on Columbia Pike. And this question is primarily for Reed Teschner, but anybody else can chime in. So, I mean, we often see, first of all, just to give a little experience, we often see clearly underage riders riding on the sidewalk, riding past our wall very, very quickly. We also have apparently kind of a location where they're dropped on a regular basis. And it takes up a great deal of the sidewalk, especially right now since Columbia Pike is under construction. So my question is, since you had mentioned that people are supposed to take pictures in some cases, for example, of where they leave the scooters, how are they held accountable for that? And how are any of the riders held accountable for how they ride? Because we've almost been wiped out just coming out of our driveway.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think rider education, as I mentioned, is the first and foremost thing that we try to address before anyone gets on our scooter. We try to, run through a very thorough tutorial of how to ride properly in terms of not riding on the sidewalk, avoiding public spaces, parking properly. We do have a live 24/7 support line, so that is looking at those photos that are being taken once you finish a ride. And to your mention of underage riding, that's absolutely something we discourage. Over the past few months operating here in Arlington, we've required riders to scan their driver's license to show that they're 18 years old. We also don't allow duplicate driver's license to be scanned in, so a parent can't scan one in for their child. And obviously, look, across the board on any transportation form, there's going to be some bad actors out there. I think the key is to just educate riders more and more, and I think it becomes more ingrained in how they act. I know this is the new form of transportation that's, it gets a lot of press, but, I think, this has kind of turned folks away from forgetting, there's 40,000 deaths by cars per year, 2.3 million accidents by cars per year. There's been plenty of studies out there, specifically Austin, Texas, that show that scooter rides are a fraction, scooter accidents happen at a fraction of the pace that bike accidents do. So we're right along there with what you would expect from bicycles, but we're always trying to educate our riders to make it safer.
Okay, on this side,
Hi, my name is Ann Kelly. I've only lived in Arlington since 1950, but I have a number of groups I'm involved in, and I've been asked to ask these questions. Do the people who rent the vehicles take a test or have a class? You've kind of mentioned that some. Also, do they get a badge or something with a picture on it? Do they have helmets? Do they required to wear the helmets? And are there officers that are around that enforce the rules and regulations on these vehicles? And
last one, please.
anyway, and are these people insured when they get to rent one of the vehicles?
So I'll try to answer some, and then you'll answer some. Let's see, I lost track. You got it? Okay. Okay, no scooter classes are offered. You do have your stuff and a tutorial. However, some operators, another operator, held a class at Central Library back when we got started, inviting people to come, and they were there, and they helped them learn how to ride them. I watched, I did not ride, but they were there doing a pretty good job, I thought, and we had a representative of the police department there at the same time. ID, this particular operator to my right, is they do require the driver's license. Not all the operators are the same, correct, Greg? That's going to be one thing that's going to be evaluated during the pilot, as we look forward, I think. The police department responds to emergency calls. They're obviously not responding to every single thing that's happening. I don't want to speak for the police department, but that's another thing we're watching very closely right now. The helmets are not required by Virginia law, so we cannot require them by law, but we certainly encourage them. You guys do. We encourage them at Capital Bike Share. We offer them almost for free or some kind of concession, right, Greg? But I personally, and this is anecdotal, you guys have done it, I don't see very many riders of scooters with helmets on. I don't see a lot of riders on bikes, Capital Bike Share with helmets. Now that's a discussion probably we can't cover today. But what else, was there something else I missed? Insurance. Well, they are, you might want to answer that, but they're basically, the insurance industry has not caught up with this subject yet either. Because the question is, if I'm riding it and I rented it from you, does my insurance cover me if I have an accident? And I don't have a good answer on that.
Yeah, that one's a little into the weeds in terms of, if someone reports an incident, our whole legal team has to go into that and deal with that. So I don't want to pretend to be an expert on that topic at all. In terms of city, we have an indemnity agreement with the city that holds cities harmless themselves once we go into an agreement with the city or county.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any questions over here? Over here, yes.
Chris Gregory. I like the idea very much of the e-scooters and e-bikes because I think it's really environmental. My question is about cost. Both my son and grandson really like birds, but they tell me that it's not economically good if you need long rides, that it's really a short thing. Can you talk about the pricing thing?
Yeah, absolutely. The average distance of our ride is around 1.4 miles, and I think we see our average user spends around $3 to $4 on a ride. So like I mentioned before, we're really looking to, our sweet spot is the first and last mile, as we like to call it, those distances that are too short to drive a car or too long to walk. Right now it's $1 to unlock our scooters, and prices can range anywhere from 10 cents to 29 cents, depending on the area you're in. So that's where we are right now, and we think it's an affordable transit option, and that's the feedback we've gotten so far from our riders.
Great questions, everybody. Keep them coming. Let's take the one over here.
Thank you, guys. My name is James Cullum. Hi. So, some of the criticism that I hear of the scooters is that they are impossible. Some of the criticism that I've heard of the scooters and a lot of the angst that I'm hearing from everybody here tonight is that they're impossible to police, that people that they ride on sidewalks, that they don't wear helmets, that they, so it's easy to say that it's up to localities to police the use of these scooters, but they don't have the resources to deal with all of the requests. And some of the scooters, if you pick them up, they'll beep and say, we're calling the police, put the scooter down and stuff like that. Well, I mean, it's kind of silly because if I'm getting mugged, all I have to do is just grab a scooter and then the police will come rescue me, right? It's not going to happen. So the question that I really have is, when you hear criticism that the scooters are encouraging lawless behavior because they're not policed, how do you respond to that?
I don't think I've been asked that question directly, but currently the police department, if they're on regular duty, like let's say they're over at Clarendon and they're looking at bicycles and traffic, if they see there, while they're there, bad behavior, and I've been working with a group in a regional, they will stop that person and talk to them. We're also, they put the group that we had in November, and it's about to roll out again, I've forgotten what we call it in the county. What is it called? Yeah, Street Smart, sorry, thanks. We put some electronic signs up in the Clarendon area, cannot ride on sidewalk, trying to get them off the sidewalk. That is no easy task. It's a real challenge. We're going to be working on later as our group is getting into interpreting what the new General Assembly law is. We actually have a meeting coming up with the police department because you're right, they don't have the resources to do this. They have enough challenge doing pedestrian responses, bicycle responses, and cars, I think. And I don't speak for them, but I think it's a real challenge.
It's a resource issue.
Well, it is a resource issue. I think that's true.
Okay, I have a question over here. Carl.
My name is Carl Van Newkirk. From my observation, I see a lot of people, particularly on the Capital Bike Share, but probably also on the scooters, that seem to be riding recreationally rather than for a purpose. And it seems to me that changes your thinking a lot about how the transportation planning should be done, how routing should be done, and so on. So I'd like to ask, A, do you have statistics of any kind indicating what percentage of people are purpose-driven and what percentage are recreational-driven? And secondly, do you have any thoughts or ideas about incorporating that into the transportation planning that you showed, which you didn't mention recreational use at all?
Okay, thank you for your question. Forgive me for not mentioning it. You know, of course, I work in transportation department, so I kind of geek out about transportation. But it is true that many users of the trails are for recreation. It's definitely a possibility. We've got certain trails that are mountain bike trails. You're not going anywhere, you know, on that. That is pure recreation / exercise. So to that point. Now, as far as how many people are using the scooters for recreation, I don't think we have any solid data. But how many people are using cars for recreation? I know when I was a child, when I was young, and I had my license, that was what we did. We cruised around. You know, I think, you know, like American graffiti is a mainstay of American culture. You know, we drove around town and, you know, kind of got into trouble. No, we didn't do that.
I will say that for anecdotally, a lot of the people riding these some of them definitely are doing it for fun. They're having a good time. They're getting on their scooter. They're riding over to Trader Joe's to buy groceries and going back. But they're still having fun. I've witnessed fun. Yeah. I don't have the numbers.
The Cherry Blossom is a perfect example. I saw people all over Cherry Blossom Festival with riding scooters. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, Scott.
Hi, Scott Pedowitz. Alex made a point during his presentation that people are more likely to use facilities if they feel safer on them. I've heard that actually people are more likely to bike and scoot in the streets the faster they can go because there's less of a differential between them and the auto traffic around them. First, I'd like to validate that. Is that the case? And second, it is counterintuitive that you feel safer going faster. If that is true, are there strategies for helping to make that case that it's the best way to improve safety and get these tools off of the sidewalks?
The police department in Arlington is totally and adamantly opposed to putting it above 10 miles an hour on the street. They don't have the data. They believe that they don't buy the argument, and some of the operators believe that they should be at 15. And frankly, we don't have a conclusion on that. And I can't weigh in because I'm only taking, you know, I have an opinion, right? But good question. Thanks.
Okay, next question, right over here.
Hi, my name is Charlotte, and I live near the Columbia Pike area. And I would just like anybody here to raise their hand if during this day today, coming or going, that you saw scooters just thrown on the sides of the road anywhere. Sidewalks, streets. I mean, I was up Columbia Pike. I stopped counting at 40 today. And that is just, they can just drop them anywhere. I mean, and nobody, how long can they stay there? At some point, does somebody just come and pick them up? Or if I just see it on the side of the road, I can just decide I'm now gonna pick one up and keep riding. Because it's just distracting, if nothing else.
Yeah, so thank you for your question. Excuse me. Yeah, thank you for your question. So as Jim mentioned during his presentation, the beauty of these devices is that unlike, you know, traditional like Capital Bike Share, where it's referred to as station-based, where, you know, you have to pick it up from a certain spot and leave it at a certain spot, you know, at stations or docks. These are essentially free-floating, and so they can be left pretty much anywhere, but within reason. So they can't, you know, they can't be right in the middle of the sidewalk blocking things. They can't be in front of doors. They can't be at bus stops, driveways. But of course, we know that not everyone obeys the rules. Not everyone knows the rules. And so the county has been working with the operators especially. We meet monthly, you know, regularly scheduled meetings to talk about issues that come up. And, you know, one of these things particularly recently, has been scooters at bus stops. And so I was actually on Columbia Pike today, and at Columbia Pike and Orem, there were two Lyft scooters, blocking a bus stop and blocking the sidewalk. So there's a lot of education that has to be done from the county side, I think from the operator side as well, to make sure that their customers know where to leave these things, because sometimes the problems are from users who don't know and they just park them wherever they want. Sometimes it's from the folks dropping them off that aren't trained thoroughly, or they're unclear. So we're trying to tackle these issues.
What he didn't add, though, is then when we get to the mobility, sorry, at RNVA, if we hear things, and I've received calls or someone's received calls that you're having a major problem, we call the operator, do we not, or send them to the operator? So I don't want you to think that we aren't reacting to more dramatic situations. I had a call from a business person, which I think I sent to you yesterday, and he didn't realize there was even anything else that could be helped. Maybe that company would not allow their, it wasn't Bird, but somebody, there was a multifamily housing, they did not want them there. So there are methods, but it's not certainly automatic. You pick up the phone, it's resolved in 5 minutes, right? We do have a requirement of 2 hours generally, and that is being met sometime, but not all the time. Thanks.
Okay, Kim.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. Kim Klingler, Columbia Pike Revitalization Organization. And I want to comment and question on the previous comments that just have been made. So I've been speaking to a lot of developers and property managers on Columbia Pike. And they personally, many of them in the high-rises, would like to see the scooters in front of their buildings. Is there a way to keep them away from bus stops, but to put lines or something that will encourage the scooters in places that people want them, where they are safe?
Yeah, I'll let you go ahead. I'll start.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have plenty of business partnerships. We work with Hilton Hotels, for instance, for high tourism areas. We work with them to have a corral out front of the hotel, so folks can come and go. It's a great option for travelers who are coming in from the hotel and want to see the town or city that they're in. Yeah, we'd be absolutely willing to do that. Arlington's been great about the corrals that they already have put out there. Yeah, they're fantastic. I've recommended them to other cities, just down in Florida a couple weeks ago, actually. I recommended it. So, yeah, it's a fantastic option, and we would love to partner with a lot of businesses out there.
We think we have 7 locations near Metro. And not to get into the weeds here because I know time's running, we actually worked with traffic engineering, found spots that where parking wouldn't be there, but where there would be room for these temporary, we copied this from somebody else, got the idea, I can't remember where, but corrals where we have an emblem, they can come there, so could the bikes, and we're watching that. Where the theory, the hope is you come out of Metro and it's right there, and it's not laying over on the sidewalk or blocking an ADA compliant entrance, some things like that. Thanks.
Well, and also an easy way for users to know this is, excuse me, and the corrals are a nice thing for users to know this is where you drop it. It's nice for the juicers. This is where you can put them easily. It very communicates that, right?
Okay, let's take one from the center row here.
As a handicapped senior, I'm Gail Dennis. As a handicapped senior, I find it necessary to drive just about anywhere because I can barely walk a block at a time. And I've noticed and encountered people on scooters coming out of parking lots, not looking where they're going, no matter looking at traffic lights or anything, just scooting in front of cars that are coming, including mine. And yet I would probably be the one that would be accused of her hitting them if I ever hit one of them because they did this. I'm wondering if any consideration has been given to requiring that scooter riders and electric bicycle riders be required to have a driver's license the same as a motorcycle or a car has, and whether or not be required to obey, but with those licenses be required to obey the same traffic rules that people that have motorcycles and have cars and trucks have. Thank you.
That is definitely something we're going to be taking under advisement, and when we're working on the ordinance discussions, we'll be addressing that issue too, right, Pat?
Okay, Chandra.
Hi, I'm Chandra Chun. So the infrastructure that's going to be required to accommodate these additional bicycles and scooters is going to cost money. The policing that's going to be needed for these additional scooters and bicycles is going to cost money. Management of these vendor contracts and issues is going to cost money. So as part of this, 9 to 12 month pilot period, as part of this evaluation that you're going to complete this summer and present to the board, are you going to include any? Are you going to quantify those costs? And 2, are you going to present any recommendations to generate revenue to cover those costs, such as permitting fees on the companies per device or a tax on each ride to cover this?
That's a great question. And I'll start off with the cost of infrastructure. Usually what we do in Arlington is we combine, adding bike facilities or scooter facilities with, other transportation projects. So usually when a street it's time for be repaved, we start looking at it. Okay, maybe we can put a protected bike lane in here. And, that's already cost. And, a lot of bike lane facilities, particularly on a street, that's just some pain, I mean, it's some of the cheapest infrastructure that we have to be able to build and implement. We don't even have to require additional right-of-way at times. So as far as that particular component, it's not as the county's already currently spending that money to give the facilities for all users, whether it be bikes, scooters, walkers, or drivers as well.
It's like you'll remember free-floating cars, car-to-go and so forth. When the board finally put that in place, we had to at least cover the cost for staff to monitor. And so I guarantee you, although I don't know the conclusion yet, we are definitely going to be looking at the costs. We're already looking and doing some initial research on what other jurisdictions are doing. Some are charging so much per day, per unit. Some are charging flat fees. I honestly don't have the answer, but we definitely have the attention to want to look at that, because right now, through that money generated, it's covering the cost of our consultants helping us. It's probably not covering staff time, but it's covering that. And it's also, we're going to recommend to the board in May, which I think they're going to do, to extend the pilot through October during the summer months while we are evaluating everything. Because a lot of December and January, it was hard to evaluate because there wasn't a lot going on. So we're happy about that. We're going to ask the operators, including Bird, to pay an extra $4,000 during that process. I believe everyone will go along. It's just so we have the funds to keep people like Greg and our other consultants. And we're also using county staff for research, and there are a lot of components going on. I'm sure the board will want to have a recommendation on how to go forward with that. Thanks very much.
Well, unfortunately, I'm going to have to bring this evening to an end. We have to get the AIM and the Marymount people home on time. I want to thank everybody for their participation in the Q&A. Thank you to the speakers. Thank you to the audience. I'd like to leave us on a closing note that when cars were introduced, there were a lot of problems with them mixing with the horses and with the traffic as they would walk out wherever they wanted. And in time, there was an awareness of the dangers of speed. We're talking 20 miles an hour. There were dangers of people walking out to cross the street on anywhere they wanted, not at intersections. And as a result, we now have traffic lights. We have right-of-way rules. We have much better infrastructure. So I am very confident that if scooters and dockless bicycles do last, we will find a way to accommodate everybody. I would like to thank our speakers for an enlightening evening. You've given us a lot to think about it. So thank you again for coming.
Thanks,
We hope you will join us next month for our May program, which will be a Commonwealth attorney debate between Teos Stamos and Parisa Tafty. You can make reservations at arlingtoncommittee100.org. I'd also like to thank the program committee, Jerry, and especially Ed, for putting together tonight's program. Thank you, as always, to Keep it down a little bit. Thanks as always to the Arlington Committee of 100 Board of Directors. Thank you to Anita Nolan, Jean Broyhill, and Marjorie Hobart for working the check-in desk, and of course to Joe Hobart for selling drink tickets in the back. Thank you to Marymount